record this guy for people that missed. So some others told me they were coming on. Not sure. Stuff came up. Probably struggling to get the kids down to bed. The kids hijacked their evening unit. You know how that goes. So, but hey, let me pray. Pray for us. Father, thanks for life and life with you. Thanks that you love us, that you've saved us, and you've called us to help lead your church, your family. So, fathers, I thank you for my brothers and sister there, and pray that this conversation would be helpful, encouraging, fruitful, that we'd continue to grow in just leading and discipling people in fruitful ways. So, Father, we pray again that you would lead this time, our thoughts, our questions, for your glory. We love you and pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, hey, we have not met for some months. I actually met with some of you offline in smaller conversations, but would love to get some updates, just hear what how you feel things are growing. Obviously, especially connected to things we talked about last year, in terms of intentional living, in terms of organizing people into different forms of missional communities and DNA groups, and just helping people see everyday life as mission field. And so I just got off call actually with some of your brothers and sisters in Romania. So wow. They said to tell you hello, and you don't know them yet, you will one day, but awesome group of people, really encouraging stories they had about how their churches are growing in intentional living. So they were excited I was getting on this call, and that there are other churches that are moving in a similar direction. So they had some great stories to tell of how that's growing, how that's multiplying in their churches. So maybe we could start with a few stories from you guys, just things you're encouraged about, things you've seen these last few months. How about if everybody shares a brief story of something encouraging? Could be a conversation with a lost person at a coffee shop, like all those types of things.
I'll always dive in. So last year the university was all online, so it's a little hard to do student ministry when no one's on campus. But we connected. I offered to tutor maths because I have an engineering background as well. And so we connected with a whole bunch of students that way. But I was on campus last week, and I'd met with a friend, and we'd been praying in the morning together, and just saying, he was just encouraging me to go onto campus and say, Lord, who do you want me to chat to? And I'd gone onto campus, and I'm starting to get a little discovery Bible study going with a bunch of students reading Mark's Gospel together. And the one guy rocked up, and we spent time doing that. Then I had some time to kill, so I went and sat sort of fairly conspicuously on the stairs and started working on my sermon for Sunday. And people would walk past and sort of greet me, and then the one girl walked past and she definitely greeted me, sort of thing. And I said, Lord, well, maybe she's someone to talk to. We'll just go with her and bless her. And 20 seconds later, she was standing in front of me and she said, sorry, what are you up to? What are you working on? I said, well, I'm working on a talk for Sunday. She said, oh, you're a pastor? I said, yeah. She said, what are you doing here? So I explained the whole story and our goal for the ministry. And she said, it was so funny. I walked past you and it was like the Spirit said to me, ask him what he is doing.
Nice.
And I said, no, Lord. And then I said, okay. So she turned around and that led to this wonderful conversation. So, and she's very connected in res, which is where one of the residences I want to get involved with. So it was just a really great conversation. I haven't seen her again. That was last Wednesday. But I was grateful for that conversation.
Love it. Love it. Yeah. So I told you I was just talking with a Romanian, very similar situation, Paul, with a guy. He had stopped in to get a coffee at this place, small little coffee shop. Stopped in to get coffee. Quick. He thought it was going to be quick, but similarly had this sense, prayed, heard he needed to talk to this barista. He needed to ask this barista like a genuine question, and it turned into a 30-minute conversation. 30-minute conversation. Never met this guy before. Guy talks about being recently divorced, how hard it is, about how sad it is that he's separated from his son now. And he said they ended up crying together, like
Sure.
Simple coffee. Simple. So we talked about that principle of the people in our churches having this posture and this readiness in their daily lives. Like this girl at the university. This posture to say there's humans around me right now. There's humans in my life today. Many of them are probably sad, broken in some way. What's God want in these moments? As we go to work, as we go to school, as we live in our neighborhood. But if our people in our churches don't have that expectation, that readiness, that posture to engage intentionally, I believe we've got opportunities around us that God has prepared every day. And I think we miss a majority of them. So how do we help our people grow in this readiness, this expectation, this relational posture? So yeah, I'm going to math class today. There's probably a few people there that I need to love well in some way. Or I'm going to work at lunch break. There's probably somebody I need to love well at lunch break today, or after work, or before work, when I drop the kids off at school, when we go to the park. There's probably somebody there, because that's how God works. Again, he's always creating these opportunities with people. But where our people expect it, where it's not an occasional thing, it's a regular thing. Like going to the park probably wants me to talk with somebody there, ask them a question or two, get to know their story a little bit, find a way to tangibly bless them, serve them. God probably has that at school today, probably has that at work today, probably has that. So what else? Other stories? Thomas? Something?
I was waiting for you to call us out.
Yeah, I'll just call you out now.
We're a bit slow. Yeah, so like I said, the start of the year was just from moving from last year, where everything was very slow go, and it felt as if you had a lot of time on your hands. This year, just the school started early, and it was flat out busyness with school. I think some of the great stuff is that, or that we're thankful for, is just adding another missional community. It was really so we have now 3 missional communities that I will share a bit of the difficulties now, but at least solid communities. And the third one is a weak one for younger people, and that has really been good. And I think the guys is catching on to this whole idea of connecting to people. So there's been slow but steady growth. Also, people being invited in, so that we're thankful for.
Good.
The DNA that started with one group is now at least 2 groups. So we 2 DNA groups, which is good. That we're thankful for. Yeah, and so I mean, what has been happening, just that sort of throws us a bit, is also a positive thing. But we've had a lot of walk-ins in church and people really sticking around, and so it almost and space is becoming a problem. So we really want to invite those people into the missional communities, but it's really that even bigger houses is difficult, because as soon as you have 3 or 4 families, you sit with a big group. So we've really been battling with that, which is a good problem to have, in a sense. So our next focus is on we need to train new people, and maybe sooner to start new groups. But time was really a challenge. So for this year, yeah, so that is some of our picnics that we had in the parks end of last year paid off. So we have a couple of people at least coming to church after that. So that was good on Sundays. And the other thing that we really tried to push is, even if it's not missional communities then, but just people being hospitable and maybe inviting 1 or 2 people, even if it's not a regular thing and as committed as the missional communities yet, but just being hospitable and inviting people. And slowly but surely it seems as if small relationships are forming. About just our men's group and ladies group. So we basically started that out as missional communities, or as a DNA, before we met you, and so that groups grew and keeps growing. So we sort of have now a hybrid model. Maybe that is some of the difficulty with our time, but that just seems to work. So it's a bit safer. So our men's group is meeting tomorrow night and tackling the very difficult topic of the vaccinations, because we, like in many churches, you have people that we don't have at least real anti-vaxxers, because they don't. Yeah, I mustn't say that. Maybe some of you are anti-vaxxers. Yeah, but there's a growing tension just about being forced to be vaccinated. That I feel. And so the purpose is we a men's group that like to tackle difficult topics and try and to really just love each other, even if we differ extremely. So our principle is we're not going to stop loving each other. And that has sort of become a magnet, because we adding new men every week, because guys invite friends and say, listen, here's a place where you really can just speak. And so that isn't our main. So we try. So I always try there to bring a gospel perspective. But that's almost more evangelistic than it is real community and DNA. So that has really been working in some strange sense. Good. So, and the ladies group does the same. So the ladies do a bit different. So they meet all over the city and that has also been a blessing. So the intentionality, I think, is growing. It's just it feels as if like I said, this first month and a half was just crazy.
Yeah.
So
I like it.
That's us.
I like it. Well, I like that you emphasized also hospitality. I talk with churches all the time. If our people don't learn to major again in hospitality in daily life, I don't think we're gonna accomplish much. So
Yeah.
hospitality, I believe, is such a big biblical theme that is expected for the church together as family, but then extending that hospitality to those outside the church. And so keep talking about it, keep telling stories. Even it doesn't have to be a big meal or a big party or a big event. Doing a lot of littler things, I think, is usually more effective. And then they're easier to organize, and more people are capable of leading it because it's smaller, simpler, cheaper, and you can fit it in anybody's small apartment or their small house or their small yard because it's smaller, simpler, cheaper. So you guys know I work with some churches in England, and I was talking with a guy recently in southern England, and he's really putting a lot of energy into this idea right now, because he said, at least in that part of England, opening your home, opening your table is not common.
Sure.
People struggle with it. So he's really trying to normalize that everybody needs to be growing in hospitality, opening their table. And so I don't know if you've heard me talk about this before, but his thing now is beans and toast. It's like everybody can put out beans and toast, like simple, cheap, like. So he's just encouraging everybody to say, okay, beans and toast. Who do we invite to beans and toast? But I love the perspective. I love the reference point for people, because he said as soon as they started talking about beans and toast, then a lot of people were like, oh, we could do that.
Yeah.
We thought you were talking about something bigger, something more elaborate, something more expensive, something that would take more time, something that would be difficult to do with a lot of small children. We thought you were talking about that. You're talking about beans and toast. We could do that. And so it's changing the culture of this church, where more people now are hosting and providing beans and toast. So I don't know what the version of that would look like in Nairobi, Peter. I don't know what beans and toast, how that translates to Nairobi or how it translates to Belgium. But you can figure out the proper contextualized version. Good stuff. Christo.
How do you get that right in a family where there are kids or school the next day, and one of the spouses has more capacity for that than the other? If I'm honest, I probably could do it almost every night, doesn't matter. Whereas my wife is saying, we're already hosting our home group on a Thursday night. We've got people here on Sunday. Yeah, that's as much as we can handle, sort of thing. And so I wrestle. And I mean, so one of the values for me is eating together. And so when our home group meets now on a Thursday, we do supper. And already they're saying, no, we shouldn't do it every week, and it's too much effort. And I'm going, actually, it's value. Something happens when you share a meal together. But how do you handle when there's this difference of opinion, not only within the home group, but within the home?
Very real issue, Paul. I'd say a couple things we learned through the years. One, again, keeping it simple so that the food part of it can be experienced a little more quickly.
Yeah.
And then also just changing your expectations to say, there's going to be great value tonight if we're together around beans and toast and have a 30 to 45-minute relational experience together. It doesn't have to be 2.5, 3 hours because of school the next day, because of small children that need to be put down to bed. So we realized that, like with our missional community, on weeknights, we weren't going to be able to do something beyond 7:30 or 8 p.m. So that meant we were going to need to be together maybe 90 minutes sometimes.
Yep.
So 6 to 7:30, 6:30 to 8, because of getting home from work and getting there and all that. So we were just going to have to be careful about our expectations. So keeping certain things a little shorter, a little simpler, so that people can manage work, getting home from work, getting kids there, that whole thing. So anyway, then the second part with, different spouses, it's usually the case. One spouse is usually more extroverted and just has a different capacity. Like my wife is energized by having people in our home. I'm not. I do it because I love people and I feel called to live this way, but it still is tiring for me. So you got to take that into consideration. Like, how often can we do that? What should that look like? So, but it's important to communicate about it, obviously, between spouses, but also with your whole small group, because you need to be on the same page with these things. So I would say one way is to say, what do we have capacity for in the season? Okay, we can probably do these types of things 2 times in a week. If Paul, you've got more capacity relationally and are energized by it, then I think you need to look for other types, similar types of opportunities, maybe outside the home. Does that make sense? So maybe your wife is like good with twice a week, having people in your home twice a week, but you're like, but I want to hang out with students 2 more times. Okay, go do it. Just don't expect your wife to have the same capacity as you or the same energy as you. But that doesn't need to prevent you from going and figuring out other places and other times to do some things. Does that make sense? So get some guys together over somewhere else. Get somebody else to host. Do it in some public space or outside space or university space. So I don't think it needs to be an either or. You need to adjust to the capacity. And there's a lot, I believe, in this. We learned this with one of our closest friends who was leading another missional community. He is an extreme extrovert. She is an extreme introvert. And for some years, it created some conflict in their marriage, unnecessary conflict. Part of it was they didn't understand what was going on. So when we started talking about introversion and extroversion and how relationships give life or suck the life out of you, they didn't have an awareness of that. So we talked about it, and we started to talk about it actually with all of our leaders. And it actually helped, I think, a lot of marriages. Just talking about it, being aware of it, okay? But then we said, okay, again, how can you work then on both sides of it to appreciate both sides of it? So again, it's helping each of your communities ask the question, what do we have capacity for? And some others in our community are going to have more capacity. This isn't, we don't, everybody doesn't have to have equal capacity. That's not normal. That's not realistic. Some are going to have more capacity. So those with more capacity can use that capacity to do other things, additional things that some in the community won't. So I think that's part of the shift that needs to take as you develop your missional communities is it's not that everybody has to do the same thing in the same way all the time. I think that's a false traditional small group mindset that says if everybody can't do it and do it in the same way at the same time, we won't do it. And so what I've seen through the years is many small groups do very little because they've basically chosen, you know, the idea of the least common denominator, the lowest. And so it's like, some in our group don't want to do this, so we won't do it. Some don't want to do this, so we won't do it. Some don't want to meet that night, so we won't do it. And then they end up doing almost nothing. Versus saying, what are we going to do together? And then in addition to that, maybe the guys are going to do something additional on Thursday nights. They're going to watch some rugby. And the women are going to do something on Saturday mornings. And these two families are going to do something on Sunday nights. And some of the guys that like to cycle are going to cycle on Wednesday afternoons after work. But where you see a community as this creative, flexible, relational space. Does that make sense? It's just like with me and my kids. So I've got an 18-year-old son and a 7-year-old son, and then 16, 13, 11-year-old daughters. Sometimes we do things together as a whole family, but many times we don't. Many times I will do something just with my oldest son, or I will do something just with my youngest son, or I will do just with the girls. Does that make sense? So it's creative and it's flexible and it's not one size fits all. So I think your communities, you really need to help them have that perspective to say, yeah. How do we appreciate introversion and extroversion and capacity and seasons of life? Because that's another thing that's, seasons of life. One of the families in my gospel community right now, they just had their 4th baby. So they've got 4 under the age of 7. It's a unique season of their life, okay? To have 4 children under the age of 7. Their capacity is not very large right now. 2 years ago it was, because they only had 2. Now they have 4. So it's changed significantly in the last, 2 to 3 years. So their capacity has changed. So we need to be aware of seasons of life, people's capacities, to say, again, how do we keep moving forward, taking these things into consideration? We don't stop making disciples. We don't stop living on mission. We adjust. So you don't, you have 4 kids now. Okay, no more mission for the next 5 years. No, it's not that. It's, okay, how do we adjust to fit the circumstances so that you can be faithful, you can be obedient, making disciples, living on mission in this unique season of your life? Does that make sense? Okay, Christo.
Yeah, on my side, I think the biggest highlight probably was sports ministry. I think I've told Todd a little bit about it, but we have a couple of students in our church who decided to, with the idea of the missional community, so with their particular missional community, they said they want to start an ultimate frisbee game on a Thursday afternoon. And so we thought, I was kind of like, yeah, sure, go for it, man, whatever. And then on the first Thursday, over 20 people pitched up, and like 10 of them weren't in our church or in our community or anything. And from there, it's just been growing too much for us to handle. We actually had to spend church budget on, we had to create a sport budget and spend money on bibs because it was just chaos. We had to buy cones to lay out the field. And now we had to buy an extra frisbee and more cones and more bibs because we have to play more than one game at the same time. Just to give you an idea of like how many people in the community wants this. But so maybe just a highlight out of that, we've seen a lot of the people who that's their first entry point. And after that, they decide to either come to a Sunday gathering or whatever else. But just a personal highlight, one of my friends, and he's part of our missional community, but he's a very hardcore atheist. So obviously he won't come to our Sunday gatherings, but he comes to all of our other gatherings. And so him and I have been walking a road for a long time. And then he came to Frisbee with me, and they met, I don't know, I didn't even meet her there, but another person who was at Frisbee, just because she walked past at the park and she saw the game and she was like, can I join? And they said, yeah, of course you can join. And then cut to a Friday evening braai at my house where we were hanging out with our missional community. And then this girl pitches up. I don't know her, but I meet her. I just assumed she was invited by someone because there's always new faces at these gatherings. And then I hear that she came through Frisbee, but then this friend of mine and her are sitting and speaking to each other, and he asks her, are you religious? And she says, no, not at all. I don't believe there's a God. And then he says, oh, but this guy whose house we're at, Christy, he's a pastor. And so he believes. And then he starts kind of like sharing the gospel with her. And we're like, what's happening? My atheist friend's sharing the gospel better than I can. And so it was just like such a surreal moment I was just like sitting back listening to their conversation. And then I realized this, I was never one of those sports ministry guys. I used to be part of a sports ministry, but then I thought it became too cliquey in a way.
Yeah.
But I just saw the power of sports within a strong community and how that can impact. So I'm excited about that whole idea. And
awesome. Love it. What a great story. You gotta tell that story. You gotta tell that story so others can hear that at so many levels. I love it. But I mean, sports is just another relational space. You know, whether it's football in Europe or, you know, rugby or frisbee. So Christo, one of the main churches I work with in the Czech Republic, so again, highly atheistic country, they've got a huge ultimate frisbee thing going on now.
Oh,
similar story. It's really fun because I 25 years ago actually introduced them to ultimate frisbee. They'd never seen a frisbee. I mean, it was just out of communism. They didn't have frisbees. It literally in the country, you couldn't buy a frisbee.
Wow.
When I first was living in the Czech Republic in 1994, couldn't buy a frisbee. So I brought over a bunch of frisbees. They were terrible. Okay, they'd never seen a frisbee. They'd only seen hockey, and they'd seen hockey and soccer. Never seen a frisbee, so they were terrible. But we started playing. They liked it. Became more and more popular. You started to see some different teams and leagues pop up, and now it's a big thing around the country, which is really fun to see. But this church that I work with that is organized around missional communities is just creating this regular, and they've got about 60 teenagers coming out for it, like weekly, and probably 40 of those are atheist teenagers. But they've created this really fun relational space. Just happens to be connected with a Frisbee. And it's the same things happening. They hang out, they talk, they become friends before the games, after the games. They go for a Coke or, something afterwards, after their Frisbee games. And it's created all kinds of consistent relationship with these, in this case, teenagers. So it's an example of, again, the people in our communities, in our neighborhoods, in our cities, they're playing Frisbee and football and rugby, and they're doing those things as part of their daily experience. So how do we get our people integrated into those things? It's not, it doesn't need to be that hard. But then when our people do get in the middle of those relational spaces, it does require an intentionality to say, yes, we're going to play some Frisbee or some rugby or some hockey, but we're going to actually talk with people and get to know their story. Ask them some genuine questions. Build some trust. Basically become friends with these sinners, which you guys know we've talked a lot about on previous calls. Part of the primary identity or calling of the church is to be friends of sinners. Whether that requires a meal or teaching math at the university or Frisbee or, again, whatever it is, but how do we become friends of sinners? So that through those relationships, we can demonstrate the gospel through how we live and speak the gospel through our words. So, and some of you, you'll probably get a couple of your missional communities, Christo, that love that stuff. And then a lot of them won't, Frisbee's not their thing. But there's another thing that's their thing. Yep. So help them take that thing, whatever that thing is, could be music, drama, because I believe God has given us our hobbies and the things we love to do for his purposes. It's also for our enjoyment, which is a bonus. But I believe he's given us the things we love to do for his purposes. So whether it's sport, music, drama, technology, whatever it is, outdoors, climbing, hiking, for his purposes. So we've got to help our people understand that, grow in that, and then organize their lives around it. To not just pursue their hobbies selfishly or self-centeredly, but to do the things they love to do with intentionality. A lot of Christians struggle with that. Again, whether it's hiking or surfing or, here in California, you've got a lot of outdoor activity, but a lot of Christians just approach it very, I would say, self-centeredly, for their own benefit, for their own fun. And it doesn't have to be either or. That's the thing. We got to help people understand, man, still do the thing you love to do. Do those things. Enjoy those things, but do them with intentionality. Invite some lost people into those things. find where other lost people are doing those things. So keep doing what you love to do, just do it with relational intentionality. So anything you can tell us from Belgium? We're meeting you for the first time, so only if you want to.
Sure. What's the question again?
Just some of this relational, like, how would you, with life in Belgium, what is the average non-Christian in Belgium, how do they spend their time? Where do they spend their time? What would be the easiest way to engage them in relationship?
Yeah, we don't know. I guess it's just like any other place where they, they have their arts and they have their sports and they have their festivals. Belgium is actually huge on festivals. I think it's actually known for their festivals.
Okay.
Especially music festivals. They really have a great appreciation for art. The Red Devils, the national soccer team, is big. That's probably the only thing that unifies the country, because they don't really like each other across the French and Flemish border.
Really?
Excuse me. There's an app in Belgium. It's not just in Belgium, it's in a few countries. I don't know if it's in anywhere where you guys are working. It's called Meetup.
Yep.
And lots of people in Belgium actually use that app to get themselves to hang out with people of similar interests. Can be anything, can be learning how to cook, or sports, or even day trading, whatever.
Yeah.
I advertised because you also then you have yoga, you have the they're very curious about spirituality in Belgium, not Christianity. So I advertised our missional, or like weekly. I tried to word it in a way that would make it sound interesting, but no one was interested in that at all on that app. So I think maybe we should just approach it from the other way around and try and just join people where they are already.
Good.
Hanging out. One thing that I recently enjoyed was we have someone that's translating the Bible into modern day Flemish, because there are many Dutch Bibles, but not Flemish.
Okay.
There's not much of a difference, but there is a difference. And I live with a few non-believers, and the one woman is quite knowledgeable in the language. And so I asked if she would mind just reading through our Gospel of Mark in modern day Flemish to, give us some tips on our language.
Yeah.
And that was amazing. That was a really great experience, because Belgians don't read, they don't know. Let's say they feel the same way about the Bible as we do about the Quran or the Sanskrit or those, ancient texts of other religions.
Sure.
She has a Catholic background, so she already does have a concept of God, although most of them, that concept is really strange, to think that there is a God somewhere. Anyway, so she, I don't know why, but for some reason she decided to read it out loud while I was sitting next to her. And I mean, obviously she read it with a linguistic point of view, but she was making commas here and suggesting this and that. But she really got into the story. She was surprised and excited and couldn't believe it. And oh my word, can't you, it was so crazy to see someone read the Bible for the first time.
Yeah.
She doesn't believe, but I think there's been a shift. I should say she doesn't believe yet, but there's definitely been a shift in her view. And there were also many things that challenged the Catholic faith that was in the Bible, you know, that she kind of realized. I think one of the things was when it talks about the brothers and sisters of Jesus, because in their view, Mary only had Jesus and she was holy and, you know, was taken up into heaven. So she was like, wait a minute, how does this work? And I was like, yeah, he had brothers and sisters. We decided to plant a little community in the beginning of 2020 before we knew COVID was coming. So just after we decided to get together, we prayed together for a few weeks, then lockdown came. So it was really difficult for us. But we decided to launch online in a way, because some people actually search for God online.
Yeah.
And in Belgium, there's not much to find in that online space. So, I mean, we didn't really know anything about how to do it or what to do. But we ended up publishing a little video every week. Very creative. So always something with the gospel and then a prayer, someone praying kind of just out loud with some landscape material. And then we had the children make a children's video. And sometimes there was a little bit of art explaining.
Cool.
The artist explaining kind of something about God in their art. But I could just say that after 2 years of no results, because I think especially if it's online, you don't have that social connection, and you get people who are, well, I don't know, most people I guess are people who support us, who are curious, who know us, and it's hard to, because we planted in a specific local little village where there is no evangelical witness. But anyway, and long story short, this Christmas we just distributed these little postcard Merry Christmas flyers with I think it was a little QR code to connect. And after 2 years now, we have one person that joined our group.
Good.
She's a new believer. Anyway, it's tough going in Belgium.
Yeah.
But we're not we like trying different and new things. We know just as long as we keep the gospel pure, we can try whatever, you know.
Yeah.
We have to be creative.
Yeah.
I don't know if you may know Belgium is, you know, a country that is known for its beer and its chocolate, but it's actually known for its comic books as well.
Okay.
So Belgium is the country that's produced the most comics in the world, and people actually go there to study making comics. Anyway, so because it's such a big part of the culture, we decided also to make a comic of the Bible. You know, like a draw, just a sketched version, and I think we started with the Flemish version of Mark that we now have. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. Well, I love, sounds like you guys are in a good space. You feel like there hasn't been much fruit, but the things you're thinking about, talking about are the right things. And now that hopefully COVID is normalizing some, you can do even more face-to-face, you know, face-to-face stuff with people. Because I think relationships obviously can start online, but again, I believe we've got to get around food. We've got to get around the table. There's a quality of relationship that happens around the table. And it can start through Frisbee. It can start through comics. It can start through teaching math, but then it needs to get to the table sooner than later. Because there's a quality of relationship, I think, that only happens in those types of environments. So we've got to get around the table, around a coffee, around food with lost people. And then it's in those spaces that require us to ask good questions and to be good listeners and to really get deeper into people's stories so that we can hear, like, where is the source of their unbelief? Or like you said, this lady, you've learned all these you've learned a lot about her story by reading Mark through her, which is awesome. Those are important parts of her story. Like she believes what she believes because, because of these parts of her story, her family, her church experience, her friends experience, her work experience, her school experience. Those things have all shaped what she believes, why she believes it. So as we get around the table with people, we need to help the people in our church grow in their ability to do that, to ask good questions, to be good listeners so we know what the next question is, and be good listeners again so we know what the next question is. Because those questions take us deeper and deeper into a person's story, which reveal either, again, the source of their unbelief, the source of their hurt. Tons of people have been hurt by Christians, or have been hurt by the church. We need to hear that in their story. How did that happen? Why did that happen? Who did it happen with? Because that's going to be important as we try to restore their, belief in the Bible, the church, Christians, Jesus. So again, it's all rooted in their story. So we've got to help our churches become story. We call it being story-formed people. Understanding the stories of the people we're engaged with, and then connecting it with the larger story of God. So, Peter, last one, save the best for last. 4 months into your church plant.
Yeah, 5 months now. I think I've been blessed by all of the comments from the rest of the men here and the lady in Belgium. Grateful to hear all the good stories of what's happening. I think on our end as well, 5 months into the church plant, we have several missional communities that are ongoing. We have just been trying to introduce that concept of a missional community. People are used to Bible studies or cell groups sort of. And so trying to encourage those more deeper, meaningful relationships and that intentionality. And there has been, some good things to celebrate. There has been definitely challenges with training people. The church plant has been doing okay and well. We praise the Lord for that. But the pace of training leaders and forming new missional communities, or just fixing people there, is just been not necessarily matching, and some of the things have been slow. But very grateful for what's happening. I think overall there has been a lot of people inviting others to come to church, to come to missional communities.
Right.
And that's something to praise the Lord for. Ourselves here at home, for instance, we're very grateful. We host one of the missional communities, so we'll be hosting one tomorrow. And one of the people we have been trying to invite is a couple who just live on our flat here. And very grateful to God that, for the last 2 Sundays, they have come to church and they have promised tomorrow to be here and to be part of the missional community.
Nice.
And we've just been eating meals with them and just visiting their homes, and
Nice.
And that's jubilate. Yeah.
Nice. Great. Well, encouraging to hear that, because if you start the church with that kind of relational commitment, I think it's only going to continue to grow in that direction, multiply in that direction, where people understand that relationship, not program, is the priority. And that, yeah, it's not a method or a structure, but it's a relational intentionality. So encouraging to hear that, Peter. I just wanted to go back to one thing before we finish. I don't know if it was both you, Paul, and Thomas, but just when you get new people coming from other churches, the things you're calling them into are probably going to be quite different than their previous experience, right? So you're going to have some kind of assimilation process that is going to bring them up to speed fairly quickly. You don't want to just drop them into your existing communities. Please don't try that. We had some hard learning in that. New people would come, it's like, hey, let's find you a missional community. Let's put you in there, okay? Don't do that until they've gone through an assimilation process. And what I mean by that, it's just you could do 4 weeks, basically something like a 4-week process. It's basically like an introduction to missional community, missional living, intentional living, but it's an introduction to that. And so where you're talking about the why behind it, so where's the biblical foundation for this way of living? So the why behind it, and then how you believe you're trying to work it out in your context. So you have to, in that assimilation process, you need to talk about why, what's the motivation, what's the biblical foundation, and then the how. How are we uniquely trying to do this in White River, or you're part of Johannesburg, or Belgium, or Centurion, or Nairobi. So this is why, this is how. Let's help you get clear understanding. And then ask them the question, is that what you want to commit to? Because we don't want to drop you into one of our communities if you don't want to commit to that. We only want to drop you into one of our communities if you're ready to commit to that. If you're not ready, then keep coming around for another 2 months. Listen some more, watch, hear some stories. But we're not going to drop you into one of our existing communities until you're ready to commit to living this way with that community, because that would only kill that community. And that's what we learned through the years. We made the mistake, we would drop new people in that didn't understand, that weren't ready to commit, and our leaders would tell us, like, what are you doing? You're killing us. You're killing our group. Our group's already moving in a clear direction. We've got a clear mission. We're committed to that mission, and now you're sending new people that aren't committed to that mission. So now we have to try to figure out how to take care of them. Take care of them out here until they're ready to be added in a healthy way to your existing communities. Very important.
Yeah, I would. That's partly why I think we must organize that session, just meeting with you up. Because we have to think about how we do that. Yeah, but thanks. That is good advice.
So again, you need an whatever you want to call it, assimilation, introduction.
Do you think you could have a hybrid model, as in some missional communities, but just accepting that there are always going to be a bunch of people that are never going to buy into the missionary lifestyle, and so you just got to look after them in a traditional small group
Well, if you say they're never going to buy into it, then I've got a problem with that. At some point, you've got to have a come to Jesus conversation. It's got to say, are you a follower of Jesus? Because followers of Jesus live this way. So I understand what you're saying, Paul. What I would say is, yes, you could have a few, one or two, I would call them, a lot of churches call them pilot groups. And they are the consistent place for people to get a taste of these things.
Okay.
So they're going to come, they're going to be part of it for 6, 9, 12 months. Expectations are not going to be very high, but they're going to be consistent. They're going to get some of the, not just the why behind it, but some of the experiential stuff. So those pilot groups are going to eat a lot of meals together. And they're going to maybe once in a month, once in 6 weeks, they're going to do something intentional with lost people. So over the course of 6, 9, 12 months, they're going to get 4, 5, 6 meals. They're going to get 3, 4 experiences with lost people. So that they're getting introduced, they're getting a taste of it. Because a lot of Christians, you can talk about these things, but until they see it, feel it, taste it, they don't get it. They've got to experience it. And the deeper they can experience it, the more it's going to make sense. And they're either going to be excited about it and enter into it, or actually they're going to reject it and say, I just want to go to church. I just want to be a churchgoer. Unfortunately, there is a percentage of Christians that are in that, I'd call it a stage. It's the infant. It's the infant stage. So, but don't assume that somebody is rejecting it until you've given the opportunity to experience it. Sometimes we feel like, oh, we've talked about that a lot, and these people still don't get it. Well, just talking about things isn't enough ever. You can't just talk about things. They've got to experience it. So be careful. You might say, man, that family over there, they don't seem to, want this or get this. It's like, make sure you've given them proper opportunity to experience it before you make that judgment on, their motivation. So again, yeah, Thomas, we can get on a call. We can talk about creating an assimilation thing.
Yeah, or even what but we can speak about it. What we've been thinking about is there is some, so or make a new group in a way of people and take them through the training and see if there's not something that develops from that. Maybe that was what I was thinking. Identifying leaders, even if the start out is something of an old small group model that people will be used to, but then taking a group with a leader through some of the Mission Made Simple material.
Yeah.
That can that was some of the things we were thinking about, but once again, it is just time.
Yeah.
So but we will.
Yeah, I would encourage you to find somebody, one of your better, more mature leaders, to take responsibility for this, not to add it to what you guys are already doing. You probably already are doing more than enough. But that pilot group idea, that assimilation process idea, that's somebody that one of your younger leaders that are developing, that's something they can do.
Yeah.
Todd, could I ask a question on the flip side of this? The idea of someone who's very missional and but they are struggling to see the value of the family part of things. Maybe to give an example, there's this one college student here in our church who's just always running out, and he says the majority of the people in his hostel or in his residence isn't Christian. So he's spending all his time there, but he's neglecting the church family to such a degree that his good friends at church feel offended and they feel hurt by this. So he's so missional, but he's missing out on the family part, and he doesn't see the need for it, if that makes sense. How do you? That's almost a different side, because I understand obviously it's always a challenge to get people to be missional, but it's like the opposite almost. And eventually you'll become less effective missionally. I'm convinced of that as well. But
yeah, so again, I would talk about the why behind it, Christo. Like, we're not meant to do any of this alone. We're not meant to live the Christian life alone. We're not meant to be on mission alone. We're meant to be doing it together in community. It's clear biblically. It's clear, like, sociologically. You know, if you want to look at the statistics, you've heard me talk about the 5.3 principle before, that all of his dorm mates or those people, non-Christians in his life, if he wants to see them influenced, they need to be influenced by more than him.
Yeah.
There needs to be a community of people with him that are influencing these lost people. And so that's the 5.3 principle, that the average non-Christian will need to become friends with 5.3 Christians in their journey to Jesus.
Sure. Okay.
So to tell this guy, like, it's not going to happen in most cases with just you. If you don't find 4.3 other Christians to join you in loving your lost friends, probably not going to happen.
Mm.
They need to hear the stories and watch the lives and seeing you interact with other Christians in their journey to Jesus. They need to be able to talk to some of your other Christian friends and ask them questions. Not just have all of the influence come from you. Again, it rarely works that way.
No.
Just like you said, Christo, it was awesome having those two atheists showing up at your braai. They're being influenced by each other, which is amazing as atheists there. But then they had other conversations throughout the night, right? Sure, they talked with you, and they talked to somebody over here, and somebody over here, and somebody over here. They watched you talking with people. You were eating together. You were enjoying it, so that's influencing them. They're like, man, this group of people have a lot of fun together, eat a lot of good food together. Look at the quality of relationship here. Like, who does that? Like, that's not happening all over, Centurion. Like, who is this that lives like this? Like, what motivates them? And so you've got all those things going on. So this guy you're talking about, Christo, needs to see that's what we need to create. So he can continue to do a lot of his one-on-one cultivating, which is great, initially. But then he needs to be able to invite those lost people to the braai and to the ultimate frisbee and watching the big rugby game and to the next thing and the next thing. He needs the influence of the community with him, getting around those lost people. So I'd talk with him about it biblically, and I'd talk with him about it again, if you want to say it statistically. The 5.3 idea.
But isn't it, Christo, I don't just want to pitch in, but isn't it also that community is not just a tool, it's also part of the goal? I mean, God's restoration work is to restore us in community and not just So what does Jesus save people to? It is not just to a relationship with himself, but with other people where we do life together and where we also mature in Christ. I mean,
Yeah.
Community needs to bring you to Christ, but they also mature you. So I think.
Yeah, that's what I meant by the first part, Thomas. That's
Yeah.
the biblical identity. That's the biblical calling to family.
Yeah.
It's not, you're just not called into relationship with, with Jesus and with the Father, with the Trinity. You're called into relationship with the family. That's what eternity is gonna, it starts here. That's where it's going, everybody. We're gonna be together with family. And so we get to live this eternal life with the family, with God over protecting, providing, leading the family. So, but I mean, it's a, awesome reality. So sounds like, yeah, he could use some help in understanding the family, family identity, family calling, piece of it. So, hey, super good, great hearing the stories. That led into a lot of, important principles behind it all too. So I love what you guys are doing. And yeah, keep going. So next month, I want to, I'm going to send you a document about, I would say it focuses on the quality of relationship, the quality of our relationships as we think about discipleship. So I think it fills in some gaps that people tend to have, and yeah, we'll give you some good talking points with your people. So I'll send you that, and we'll talk about it on the next call. So sound good?
Right stuff.
Let me pray quick. Father, thanks for loving us. Thanks for leading us. We pray for all the places you've planted us, in Belgium and Centurion and Johannesburg and San Diego and White River and Nairobi and Romania, and just you've got your family. You've got your family planted all over the world to bear fruit for your glory. That's our desire, is to just make much of you in our daily lives and to just love people well along the way. So give us strength and energy for that. Help us to do it together, not try to do it alone, but together as family. And yeah, so we love you. Thanks for taking such great care of us. We pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
We'll be in touch. Hey, please contact me. I want to hear more about Belgium and see if I can get connected with some folks there.
Thanks for having me. I will do that.
Okay. Take care.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.